With every new update, Hearts of Iron 4 gains complexity and depth. And that's a good thing, because it makes the game more interesting, but it's also making it harder for new players to not be overwhelmed by everything that they have to deal with. One of the latest additions were the military-industrial organizations. World War II has seen a shift specifically in the United States from more individual arms companies just producing weapons up to the War Production Board introduced in the 1940s that was centralizing a large part of the American economy and taking control of how things were produced. These are effectively the companies that make your weapons. So we've got one for tanks, we've got one for ships, and we've got one for planes, and we've got one for just regular infantry equipment. I'm not going to be talking very much about meta or which one particular to pick, but more about the system in general, so you understand the trade-offs, and so you know at least which, even if you're not min-maxing it, which item to pick, because the values are going to change over time, so the meta is going to change on these, and but if you're missing out on the system in general because you're not aware of it or because you're just generally ignoring it, then you're missing out on some pretty good buffs. So how does this work? So for example, if we look at the material equipment, we've got a couple of companies. We've got Springfield Armory, we've got the Ford Motor Company, and the Rock Island Arsenal. One of them is for artillery, one of them is for things that drive, and one of them is for infantry weapons. This is going to be different within each country, but what do these do? So these companies all of these companies start out at level 0. As it stands, for example, the Springfield Armory is going to raise your production efficiency cap by 3% and give your infantry equipment, so your rifles, 3% soft attack. And you also get a 5% research bonus when you're using that on research. So military industrial organizations, or MIOs, have two aspects where they're impacting. One of them is buffing the equipment that you're producing, and the other one is speeding up your research. Now, if you click on the details, you get a whole tree of things. And this is almost looking like a focus tree or a research tree of sorts, where you can select buffs to the equipment that you gain over time as these MIOs gain experience and effectively get better. So the idea is, as they produce and as they research new weapons, they gain experience and they can improve these weapon systems because there's a bit of a war going on. You can see that some of them are mutually exclusive, some of them are production related. So, for example, here we've got these that are increasing production efficiency gain. We've got some that are decreasing the production cost of the equipment. Others have actual impact on the base stats, like this one gives us 3% defense. This one gives us 5% reliability. And we obviously also have a 10% research bonus if we are using that. So how do we level these up? How do we apply these? So if you look at your production line, you'll see that this is a brand new game. I've just done a 1936 start. You see that most of them are already pre-allocated. So here's your M1 Garand production line, and it has the Springfield Armory assigned, which means that you get the 3% production efficiency cap, and the Springfield Armory gains 0.1 experience points for the production that you're running. So just by the act of making weapons manufacturers learn how to make better weapons, which makes sense. How about the buffs, however? So right now the M1 Garand here does not get any of the buffs, and this is one of the most confusing systems, because none of the systems, and you see that all of them have the MIOs assigned, but none of them actually get the benefits from any of the buffs. So hang on a minute, we had a 3% soft attack bonus. If we look at the equipment designer, it says soft attack plus 3%. Where does it go? Well, this is a stock M1 Garand. In order to actually get a better version of it, you have to upgrade it. So if we're looking at the M1 Garand, you'll see that there's a variant. You'll be aware of this from the tank designer, from the plane designers. That's how all the designers work. And it's working in a similar way for all the equipment now, or most of it. So our M1 Garand, if we were to create a variant, here we can assign a military industrial organization. So if we were to assign a Springfield Armory, we would get an extra soft attack. So our soft attack would now be increased. But we can't do that because we need army experience to actually assign this. But effectively, this is how it works. So once you have some experience, you can assign a military industrial organization to a production line and gain whatever current points the MIO has. However, as you go, so as you're producing and as you're researching, you get more. You eventually get level up. So right now, for 800 points of funds allocated, which is what it's called, it's really an experience from the manufacturer. As they get more experienced with weapons by both researching them and by producing them, they gain levels, and each level gives you a trait point, and you can assign these trait points over here and unlock additional bonuses. So if we were to unlock the next bonus, we would have to create another variant again, because the bonuses don't apply automatically. So they work like unlockable modules in ships, planes, or tanks. So production is one factor how you can get experience from your production lines, and you should always assign a military industrial organization. So if you're going to start a new production line, let's say we're going to start a truck production line, you should always be adding a military industrial organization because it's free. It doesn't cost you anything to do it, and it works it up. Some of the equipment that you never really upgrade is a little tricky, by the way. So for example, the rifles, this is the old infantry equipment 1. So as soon as you research, so we're going over to the research, as soon as you research the M1 Thompson, you would be for example applying the bonuses. But for example, trucks, you're never really going to be doing anything. However, you're missing out, and this is really a pitfall for new players. You're missing out on the bonuses from the MIO. So for example, if we look at our GMC truck here, we can actually create a variant, and we can assign the Ford Motor Company on it, which decreases the production cost by 5%. We need 5 army experience to do so we can't do it in a freshly started game. But this is something that's easy to forget because you never really research newer trucks where you would be reminded to do that. And this is something that's relatively easy to forget with things like the trucks or trains. Trains don't have them, for example. Support equipment doesn't have it either. But for things like trucks, especially, it's easy to forget these sort of things. Now, the other factor, or the other way that a military industrial organization can gain experience is by researching, which makes sense, because if a weapons manufacturer is involved in not just production, but R&D, so research and development, they will gain experience and get ideas on how to make your weapons better. So if we were to research the very first equipment upgrade, you see that there's a little research glass next to it. So if you click on research, you can assign the Springfield Armory to it, and this would then give the Springfield Armory 750 experience when the research is completed. This, however, is coming with a cost. So if we were to do this, and you look at your political power income, you see that this is costing us 0.1 political power. And this is just one line. So if we do this on a couple more, so for example, you wouldn't do this at the onset of the game, but if we were to go for an air designer and say we wanted to start researching large airframes, and then go for the heavy aircraft designer, you see that the game automatically filters which designer is actually applicable. We'll go into that in a minute. But now you have minus 0.2 political power gain. So this is a bit of a double-edged sword, because you will be depriving yourself. So you have to balance. You'll be depriving yourself of political power income, which especially early game can be quite valuable for some things. Like, for example, you do want the things like Chief of Army to get some some XP, you want a silent workhorse political advisor, but if you are effectively neutralizing your political power income by assigning all the research MIOs, you are not going to get there. On the flip side, you're going to miss out on the research funds that the MIO will receive, because once the research is done and if you haven't assigned one, nobody gets any. So if the research does not happen within the system of arms producers, but let's say it's independent inventors or it's a university that do these things, the arms manufacturers don't get any benefit out of that. The next interesting choice comes out of choosing an MIO, because for infantry weapons it's easy. There was one, at least in the case of the United States. Let's take, for example, planes. Let's say we want to create a production line for the PBY Catalinas, because we want to have more of them. So we could choose between North American Aviation or between Lockheed. There we have to, how do we decide which one we want? Well, you don't want to produce without. There shouldn't be any good reason to do that. But we want to get the funds allocated. But how do we do this? This is where it comes down to planning your strategy ahead a little bit. So you want to think about what is it you're going to be doing. Because if you hover over these icons here, for example, North American Aviation gets bonuses applied to small and carrier planes, so small airframes, medium airframes, and transport planes. Not to large airframes. Lockheed gets nothing applied to small and carrier planes, but only to medium planes. And if you look into the details, you see that a lot of these, and it says only for all medium planes. You see that these bonuses are only for medium aircraft. So if you were to say, okay, I want to focus on small frames because I'm mostly going to be doing CAS, I'm mostly going to be doing fighters, I'm mostly going to be doing carrier-based aircraft, and all carrier-based aircraft are small frames. Doolittle-Raid is an exemption. Then it might not make sense to use Lockheed to produce your PBY Catalinas, because then you're only getting this for the Catalinas, but you can get some benefits for the medium frames, the Catalinas, out of North American Aviation, because that one has some for medium planes and some for small planes. So it depends a little bit what it is that you're planning to build, and it gets even better when you're trying to produce ships. So if you were to with the carriers, it's relatively easy, but with, for example, with destroyers, it can get a little more tricky, because you then again as well have choices. You can go with the Norfolk Naval Yard, which only gives bonuses for screens, or you can go with Newport News, which also gives bonuses for cruisers and carriers. So it can make sense to think ahead a little bit and see what your strategy is, what it is that you want to be focusing on, so you can concentrate your buffs into one or a few MIOs and get the most out of it. If you're new and you feel like, okay, you've completely lost me, then just pick one. It doesn't really matter that much. Just pick something. It's better than picking nothing, but especially for production. But be aware that the research will cost you political power, and that you need to balance your political power income with the gain that you get from the MIOs. So looking at a game that has been going on for a little bit, let's see how we can, in practice, upgrade our equipment. If we're looking at the production line, you see that I've got the M3 Stuart here and I've got the M1 Thompson, and both of them have a little icon next to them. So this M1 Thompson has been designed by the Springfield Armory. But it's working as a template, and this effective design template is outdated, and that's why this little arrow is next to it here. So if we are looking at, for example, the M3 Stuart, and we're going to look at, again, it tells you here, it says your template is actually outdated, because Marmon Harrington, the designer, has been figuring out new and better ways of building M3 Stuarts by now, but hasn't applied that to the old design yet. And that means you have to upgrade it. So right now we've got the M3 Stuart, and here's a little icon for you to just upgrade with the latest traits. So in the meantime, Marmon Harrington has been leveling up. So if Right now we've got 95% reliability, 8.1 kilometers speed, and we get a bit more speed, bit reliability, bit more armor. So our armor should be ticking up as well. And there it goes. And now you could say, okay, now our reliability is over 100%. We can actually up armor the M3 Stuart a little bit more. And there's our A1 variant. Now this costs army XP because it's a new design, effectively, just like any other design upgrade that you would be doing. So if we create this new design now, we now have the M3 Stuart A1. But if we're looking up at our production line, we see that the production line is now outdated because we're still producing the M3 Stuart, which means that if we were to upgrade that, we would now have to do a switch in the production line for an improved. And we could do the same thing, for example, for the M1 Thompson. So if we're looking at our rifle design, and now we're going to create a variant where we are just going to upgrade, which gives us increased breakthrough for a price of increased production cost, again 5 army XP. Now we have the M1 Thompson A1, which means that, of course, our M1 Thompson production line is actually outdated. So now if we have to switch that, we get the better one. So that's something just do not forget, that every time you're creating a new design, you need to switch your production lines. It gets it gets even more interesting. So for example, here also the M3 Stuart A1s now, don't forget that instead of making new ones, because it is an upgraded design, an improved version. So someone went and said, what if we put a couple of armor plates here? And what if we tweak the engine output a little bit here? They can't apply this to the old ones. So you can convert these from stockpile. So if you tick that, you get a very fast production of just converting your existing stockpile into the new design and applying all the benefits that your system was having. The one item where it gets really difficult is ships, because you tend not to have ships in stockpile, because that doesn't make any sense. Ships get designed, produced, and then they are on the ocean. So in the meantime, somebody goes at the naval designer goes over the design plans, integrates some new ideas, like let's say a new way of creating better steel for the armor plating, new turret rotation systems, all these kind of things. So not like modules that are getting upgraded, but just generally improvements to the ship overall. The ship, however, is somewhere out in the Pacific. How do you get these things upgraded? Well, first of all, we're doing the exact same thing as with, for example, the tanks. We're going into the design template, and it tells you I can actually upgrade you. So we can upgrade that. And now we see that we got improved anti-air out of this. We can save that for naval experience. And now we have an improved Pennsylvania design. The problem, of course, is we are going to now have to actually refit the existing ships. So just to be aware that updating the design means that, yes, if you can produce new ones, but if you have existing ships, you're actually going to have to get the ships into the refit yard to upgrade them to the new variant. So there are some logistics involved here for you to think of. What do I do when I get new levels? So do I want to every time I get let's say every time I get new I get a new level here, do I want to upgrade all my designs and then start pulling all my ships in? Because I have to run them all through the refit, which by itself will also gain experience for the Norfolk Naval Yard. So do I want to bring all my destroyers and light cruisers in to run them through the refits, or do I batch this? So do I say, for example, okay, I've gone through 3 or 4 of these upgrades now over the last year, and it's time to refit some of my older ships, so I can pull a fleet of things off for a period, run them through refits, and that's where you kind of have to make these decisions. For the rest of the equipment, it's not that bad because you don't refit other things. So you don't refit tanks, planes, rifles, or anything. You have for tanks, you have the stockpile conversion. For ships, however, it's a different story. So that, all in all, is going to give you a little bit of an idea how MIOs work. And I personally really like the system. but it's a bit opaque if you don't really know what's going on. So keep in mind important factors. Definitely use it in your production lines. There's no reason not to. You can use it in your research to get the benefits, but it is going to cost you political power. So you have to balance that with your game strategy to see, do you need that political power elsewhere, or can you expend the cost? The more you push into the refit into the MIOs, the better equipment you get. But you have to go and upgrade your equipment. The game will actually ask you if you want to spend. When you level up an MIO, it's going to ask you if you want to upgrade the designs as well. And lastly, don't forget to assign some of your things, especially trucks, to MIOs, because these are things that you these are production lines that you tend never to touch again. So make sure you're creating variants for everything that has an MIO, and then eventually upgrade your variants to pick up all the bonuses that the system brings. And that's it for me today. Thanks everybody, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.